Hello and welcome to the Parthenon. My name is Mark Medley, and today we are opening a new exhibit here in the West Gallery titled Central South Revisited 1966 to 1983. These are all pieces that came from the Parthenon's permanent collection. They've been in storage, some of them for 40-something years. They've not seen a gallery light, and today some of them are. It was a contest called the Central South Art Exhibition, and it was centered in Nashville, and it was open. They took submissions from all over the Southeast, and anywhere that was within 300 miles of Nashville. If you were an artist, you could submit a piece. They began this process. It was a partnership between what was called the Tennessee Art League and the Parthenon. And they started this exhibition, the Central South exhibition, in 1966. They took submissions. They got judges to come from different parts of the country to judge the work, and then they handed out prizes, and they had a big opening. This was the part that was really surprising to me, was that even in 1966, the purse for first prize, what they called the Parthenon Purchase Award, was $1,000. Folks, that's a lot of money in 1966. At any rate, the other thing that came with being a Purchase Award winner was that your piece would be included in the Parthenon's permanent collection. So that the Central South exhibition, the contest took place every spring, basically in May. And the first year in May, this piece, entitled Windows 2, it was the first piece to be the Parthenon Purchase Award winner. And it's by a man by the name of Walter Stevens. And one thing I learned during the research of this entire exhibit was that the University of Tennessee in Knoxville did not have an art department until 1958. Who knew? And Mr. Stevens was one of the original faculty members at the University of Tennessee's art department, who began from the inaugural year. He had been showing work all over the state and all over the Southeast, and in New York. And in 1966, he entered this piece, Windows 2, and the judges liked it a lot. In fact, the judge who picked the piece out, I mean, we have a photo that was actually one of the illustrations that goes with the exhibit. It was a lady, and she was the assistant to the director at the Guggenheim Museum. And I believe her name was Miss Baldwin. And her picture ended up in the Tennessean. She was talking about what a wonderful variety of work was included in this exhibit. She was the lone juror in 1966, and apparently this was the piece that she liked the best because it's the one that won. So the next year, 1967, this was the Purchase Award winner at the Parthenon Central South exhibit. And if you are familiar with the art scene in Charleston, South Carolina, William Halsey is a legend, is what I found out in my research. In fact, the University of Charleston renamed their gallery in the 1980s upon his retirement as the Halsey Gallery. He was a professor of art at the University of Charleston for many years. And honestly, this piece is it is an interesting piece. Some of these pieces are they're like time capsules, and this is especially one for me in terms of what it looked like, what it looks like, and how people would have thought about it in 1967. And then there was on the label, there's Mr. Halsey, and there he is in the paper with the piece. I did considerable newspaper research for this exhibit, and when I can find a photograph of the piece in the paper, I was just like touchdown. So, all right, moving on. Purchase Award winner in 1970. Right here was by a man who actually, Mr. Halsey and Mr. Stevens are passed away, but Anton Weiss, who was the president of the Tennessee Art League and was a person who was instrumental in establishing the Central South exhibition in the first place. He actually won the Purchase Award in 1970, and this is for his piece entitled City 3. Interesting background, Mr. Weiss. His parents were from Yugoslavia. He was born in Yugoslavia, and because of first German occupation during World War II and then later Russian occupation, his parents decided to get out of the country, and they came to America and settled in Springfield, Tennessee. Ultimately, Anton Weiss made his way to Nashville and ultimately went to New York and studied with Hans Hofmann, of all things, and came back. Some of you may be familiar with Mr. Hoffman. He's like considered the maybe father of abstract expressionism. And then he came back to Nashville and began painting. He's still painting today. This piece is one that we've had in storage for many years, and it's never been out in all the years I've been here. But it's a beautiful place and time. It's another one. It's another piece to me that is like a time capsule. And that was the Parthenon Purchase Award winner in 1970. So in addition to a lot of modern art, there was a lot of traditional art that was involved in Central South as well. And this is a great example by a lady named Margot Singlist. And it has a great story behind it too, kind of similar to Anton Weiss. Margot was German and grew up in Germany, and she was a German-Russian translator. And ultimately, she came to the United States, and her family moved to Hendersonville, where she loved to paint. And she was an award winner for many years. She was featured in shows in 1976, 1977, 1978, 1982. They were all these traditionally and very, very deftly rendered realistic landscapes. She worked in all different mediums: oil, acrylic, etching. Her favorite medium was watercolor, which is what we see here. This is entitled No Hunting. And ultimately, she says that, quote, "To me, painting is not just fun, it is hard work. It is a challenge to produce a painting that completely satisfies me." There's a photograph of her here holding her loving cup. She's won an award at an art festival in Madison, Tennessee. So another place and time on this piece as well. We're going to move down here to one last piece. This is one of my favorite pieces in the entire exhibit. I've always loved this piece. I always came to this piece in art storage and was just like, golly, can't we do something with that someday? And finally, it's happened. But this is entitled Jimmy. It was the Purchase Award winner in 1972. It's by a man named Alvin Bayer. And Mr. Bayer actually studied art in New York and ultimately found his way to the South, where he taught art at the University of South Carolina in Aiken. And I'm not sure, it's unclear that if Jimmy was someone that Alvin Bayer knew, or if it was someone he had a photograph of, or what inspired him to make this little boy's portrait. But he did so, and it's almost monochromatic in green. It does have some green, some blue, and some brown in it. I love the colors, and I love how he's put it together. Ultimately, during the research, I found that Mr. Bayer had continued to teach at the University of South Carolina for over 30 years and retired finally in 2018. And I even found a photograph of him at his retirement holding a bouquet of roses. So as I mentioned, in 1966, they went to the Guggenheim Museum and asked that someone from there would come and judge the Central South show, and they sent this lady. Her name was Diane Waldman, and she was the assistant to the director of the Guggenheim. And this illustration I found in the paper, and this is in 1966, so it's way before the renovation of the Parthenon in the 80s. They're down here. In fact, this is Anton Weiss, who is mentioned as he was the 1970 Purchase Award winner and also the president of the Tennessee Art League. And the caption is that an impressive variety is the comment of Miss Diane Waldman of the Guggenheim Museum in New York, and she had come to judge the pieces, and there they are. This is another scene from the old lower level of the Parthenon, and some of you may recognize this door, and it is just like the doors that are upstairs, except it's white. And so I realized that was a good sign that was the Parthenon. And Mr. John Legata says that his task in judging over 650 entries for Central South was bewildering. And he had just a few days to sort through 650 entries and narrow this down to 200. And he was doing this physically by himself, so he obviously had his work cut out for him. This image was published in the Nashville Tennessean in May 1973. We want to thank the Centennial Park Conservancy for all their support of the Parthenon's exhibits. Their support makes the research and the production of these exhibits possible, and we are certainly grateful to them. We would also like to thank our sponsors, Tennessee Arts Commission, Memorial Foundation, Regions Bank, Sandra Schatten Foundation, and of course, Metro Parks. And again, invite you to come see Central South Revisited, 1966 to 1983, here in the West Gallery of the Parthenon.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you're the first to know about all the exciting things happening at the Nashville Parthenon.